Awesome.
Hello, hello. How are you?
Hey, hey, good to see you.
Good to see you. Dave Ford here with episode 13 of the SoulBuffalo Earth Report. I'm super excited to be here with Keefe Harrison and Andrew Linebarger from the Recycling Partnership. Keefe and I really got to know each other last year when we took that boat out into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean for the Ocean Plastic Leadership Summit. She's been an incredible advisor ever since, and we do a lot of work together. And Keefe, you're like in a new, I feel like we've been on so many webcasts. I feel like you're in a new webcast set.
Yes, I actually have a little office in the town where I live where I escape my house and come to a space all by my own. And it overlooks the common of my New England town, so I get to like watch people and be involved. Feels very exciting.
I'm here in upstate New York. Keefe is in New Hampshire. What's the name of your town?
Walpole, New Hampshire.
Nice. And Andrew, where are you?
I'm up in Akron, so right down from LeBron James Way, or I guess King James Way.
That guy just keeps winning championships and doing a lot of amazing stuff in your town. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, the I Promise School is amazing.
It's just really incredible. So it's interesting. Today we had, Keefe and Andrew brought the idea to really talk about myths out there in the world around recycling and race. And we're really excited to dive in there. When you guys have been doing a lot of research on this, but would love to sort of jump right in.
Yeah. Well, I think the Recycling Partnership has been leaning into the social justice approach to recycling since day one. For folks who are not aware of it, the Recycling Partnership is a national nonprofit. We're about 6 years old. And when we hear a company make a sustainability goal or anything to do with recycling or sustainability for their packaging, we feel it's our job to insist and assist them in delivering that. And the way that we do that is we turn contributions into grants for local governments to help them expand recycling, and I'd love to talk about some of those today. But we also help companies with how they design things so that they're better recepted into the recycling system. But those grants since day one have been really important because we've helped to reach people who otherwise have not yet been served by recycling. And I like to think about recycling as kind of the gateway to sustainability, right? And we believe that everyone should have equal access to live a more sustainable life, to learn about the importance of protecting our planet. And so when we work with cities, we want to make sure it serves everyone in their population. And we were kind of quiet about that social justice lens. It was important to us, but it was not a leading edge until really the last few months, that 6 months, that this nation has finally been able to turn its eyes onto what is truly our problem. And it's been fun to come out really driven around solutions to make sure that recycling can be that ambassador to a more sustainable life all across the way.
It's really interesting. I know there's a report that's coming out tomorrow by a lot of the sort of leading scientists about the U.S.'s role in the global ocean plastics issue. And the findings from that report are we'll post it on our sites, but the findings from that report are going to really put a lot more onus on the U.S. than a lot of folks. Like a lot of times we'll be talking to big corporations and they'll be like, oh, we're U.S. focused. So, the ocean plastics issue is like an Asia problem.
Yeah.
But it's interesting too, when you talk about low income communities, I mean, it's the same, what's happening here is a microcosm of what's happening all over the world in low income communities, and, how much, trash and waste they're dealing with. Andrew, how did you get into waste? And you just started at the Recycling Partnership. Tell us about how that came to be.
Yeah. So I guess for me, it was right around, I think it was 2014 when Toledo was experiencing water issues. There was like no drinkable water anywhere in the city. And I at that point, I was entering the part of my life where I was started thinking about having kids. So I wanted to make sure that I was doing everything in my power to make sure that the world is a habitable place when they come of age. So still working on the kids, but
and the planet
and the planet. But so my career has just kind of gotten me step by step closer to a place where I can influence change on as big a scale as possible. So I'm able to do that through the Recycling Partnership. It's a really great organization, and the way that they treat and regard these social justice causes is I think above a lot of other other companies and certainly everywhere else that I've worked for. So
that's
it's
amazing.
very exciting.
Thank you, Andrew. And you've been here only 6 weeks now?
Yeah.
Right into the mix.
I know, they come on, we're almost to 50 core employees now, Dave, and then we've got a bunch of firms that work with us. But yeah, when people join the partnership, we put them right to work. So get them out on the screen and on the stage, and here we go.
Well, so tell us a little bit more about how you guys, do some more specifics about how you're approaching diversity.
Yeah, so I think when we try to solve big problems, we always kind of back it up to what do we know and what do we think we know. And when you're dealing with recycling and working with community governments all across this country, pop quiz, Dave, how many local recycling programs are there? Do you know?
I think I know this because you told me. I think there's 9,000. But
A+, you get an A+. So there are 9,000 individual recycling programs across this country. That means there are 9,000 different sets of decision makers about how recycling should work. So that means when we're advancing the U.S. system, we need to work in 9,000 places at once. And everyone's thinking about this a little bit of a different way, but you start to hear some common themes and misconceptions. And one that we heard is that, there's certain people who care about this more than others, and we should just deal with them. And that's where people, I think, start to slice up populations, rich and poor, black and white, multifamily, single family, everyone I feel like is trying to dice it into an us versus them or the core versus the other. And what we're finding is recycling can be the real neutralizer. Some recent surveys that we did found, 90 or 87% of the consumers that we surveyed feel that recycling is important. 84 of them feel like it should be their right to be able to recycle, but not 84% of our population does not have access to easy recycling. So that's showing us that even the people who have to work harder to recycle still believe it's important, and we need to bring that to them. So when we start to learn about these misconceptions that people might have that poor people or people of color might not have the same level of interest, we have to start to test that. And we feel like it's our job to roll that back. Andrew, you want to talk a little bit more about that and kind of you're being new to this space, but you're new to the partnership, but you're not new to the space. You want to talk about that misconception?
Yeah. So we understood, and I was lucky enough to work with the recycling partnership during one of their grants for Akron, Ohio, one of those grant cycles. And we found that, a lot of the times there is simply a communication barrier, right? So there are certain neighborhoods that are super environmentally conscious, right? They have these big co-ops for farming, things like that. But there's not anyone to tell them these guidelines in Nepalese. So that's one of the areas that we really need to extend ourselves into, and that's one of the a set of the directions that we're moving in is kind of translating all of these guidelines into making them accessible for everyone who would be able to recycle.
Well, and it's interesting too, is these recycling guidelines are so complicated everywhere. Where we are in, 2 hours north of New York City in the mountains, everybody takes their trash to the recycling center, and then you look at the signs, and they don't take your strawberry containers here, but in New York City they do. So it's but everyone throws them into the recycling. It's wish cycling.
Yeah.
Then you get into different neighborhoods where large amounts of people from different countries where they speak different languages. That's what you're referring with the Nepalese, right? There's just Nepalese communities that care, but there's no translation.
Right. Early on, I was doing some work with the team, and we were going door to door, actually cart to cart in Massachusetts, and we were working with different populations of new citizens to the country, and they came from places where they didn't even have a word for recycling, so they didn't even have a concept for recycling. Waste was not even on their radar, so it's not even a translation thing. You can't translate something. You have to begin from an initial concept. And working with local practitioners who could speak the language, who understood the concept, really began to give the appropriate level of guidance needed. So, sometimes we hear, well, we tried to get recycling started in a part of our community. We gave them all bins, but they didn't use them. And you have to ask, why didn't that happen? And maybe the population that has not been served with recycling needs an extra dose of love in order to be able to understand how to make that happen first. So we really are looking how to do the deep dive. Again, it's not just a translation, it's really being able to communicate. And COVID really put the brakes on this. We were about to launch some cool programs in multifamily where we actually had ambassadors who were going door to door, helping community or citizens and people set up their program and understand it. That would be so neat. And translators were going along with them so we could connect with people in a safe, in a way where, in a language where they're starting safely into this concept of, environmental responsibility. And so I think that part is, I'm so glad that there's finally a bigger lens on the importance of that aspect of it. And we intend not to let that fade away. Very often people make verbal statements about how important it is to fight racism, but do we see that start to wane over time? We're committed to making sure that the action means that it's not waning.
Right. I think with COVID, like you mentioned, there's this idea of the Great Reset, and what does that mean? And we're at a pretty interesting, place and time, 5 days before a pretty major election here. Which we don't have time to go into, or probably shouldn't. But I
had to take my New York Times app off my phone. I just couldn't.
But the idea of this Great Reset is powerful. I mean, and the world in some ways has been equalized. And it's interesting. We were talking about the projects that you guys are doing in Baltimore. I'm from Baltimore. I have just such a huge affinity for Baltimore. I owned a house in Baltimore City years ago. I'm a huge Ravens fan and just such a big fan. So I'd love to hear about what you guys are doing there and some of the examples kind of on the ground, in some of the cities.
Yeah, well, I think Baltimore builds off some work we were doing around equity. Before we jump to Baltimore, I think one more thing on Atlanta that was kind of cool. The team actually did some work to really address do rich people, recycle better than poorer communities? We really wanted to get to the heart of that. And so we did consumer research there and found that was absolutely not true, that households from both upper and lower class neighborhoods had a same level of commitment. They approached it a different way. They had different questions, but the root commitment that you're looking for was there. The curiosity was there. And the community pride was there. And that's something I think that we can really capitalize on is the connection of pride of your community and what matters to you in your block and how you relate that on a bigger scale to your planet and how you protect that. So
speaking of Atlanta, the work you guys are doing with Ovie Mughelli, who is a friend of the Ocean Plastic Leadership Network, a former NFL All-Pro for the Baltimore Ravens and the Atlanta Falcons. Just a great way to tie together Baltimore and Atlanta. There's this incredible comic book series that you guys have partnered with to really bring this sort of eco-consciousness into cities, which is amazing.
I met him on that boat trip. We were actually in one of the little ones running out to go do some scuba diving, and I was there with him. That guy is so big. The scuba gear on him didn't fully fit. He was strapping on his life vest, and it was he was just a different size human than the rest of us. It was so interesting. I was so impressed. But yeah, that's how we met there, and he's really dedicated himself to helping to bring environmental movements to brown and black kids who've not traditionally been approached in this. And so his comic book series is the Gridiron Green Recycling, and we are going to be rolling it out in Atlanta, Detroit, and Baltimore. So we're partnered with him on writing the whole script and pulling it together. And his team there at the foundation has been really good to work with. And I love that idea of I have a 12-year-old who's still into the whole superhero comic book stuff. And so it's kind of fun when you stop to look at it, you see that there's really not enough Black representation there, and to draw the Black representation and the green stuff is pretty cool. So.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew, I mean, you're so new. Have you even seen us talk about this yet? Are you learning about gridiron green right now?
I'm learning about it right now, but I will say, even as, I mean, a 31-year-old still into comics and that sort of thing, just Black representation is really important. I know for me, and then for my nephew, he's 9, to see his eyes glow up and watch him realize that, you know, these stations are achievable. It's really exciting to see that happen. So I've got some ideas that I'm gonna have to pitch to Ovie.
Yeah, you were just telling me that. So what do you want to see happen?
Yeah, so I think it would be a neat idea to have like the recycling pile together and form into like a Voltron status. So if you're recycling the right things, right, all the bottles come together and they create Bottle Man, and same for cardboard and paper and glass bottles. But if you start to contaminate that stream, it kind of makes them weaker. Their joints don't stick together, so they kind of fall apart. So we can all do our part in battling contamination through proper recycling. So I'm gonna have to run that by him.
We got to get this in the script. I mean, Keefe, can you pull up? Do you have in front of you? I can't. I was just looking for it. I can't do it, but just so we can show the gridiron green. He's quite the badass.
Let me see. I share my screen. This looks pretty easy. I can do it.
You can do it.
Actually, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it.
Well, you know what? We'll send it out.
It's blowing my mind. Next time we are talking, I can do it. I can't talk and find it though. But yeah, look up Gridiron Green, and you'll start to see it, and I'll pull it up in a second. Why don't you tell a captivating story why I do that, and then I'll multitask better.
Well, you know, I think the thing about it, I think that, you know, it's just like you said, Andrew. It's like, how do you capture the hearts and minds? How do you educate in a way that's fun for audiences, you know, that, you know, really across the spectrum? And I think that's like one of the things that Andrew's really captured. But speaking of, so we'll send that out later. That's one of the things that Ovie's really captured. We'll send that out later. Keefe, so can you tell us really quickly about the Atlanta and the Baltimore programs, and then I have some more superhero questions.
Yes, so City of Baltimore is an interesting program because we've been working with them for years. So when we give a grant to a community, it very often takes a long time to set that up. You know, if a community has not been able to prioritize recycling, because they're also having safe roads and working with libraries and trying to make water systems work, you know, it takes a while to build the support from the local leaders. So we're very excited to work with the City of Baltimore. That town has something like 230,000 households. And right now, if you want to recycle, you have to buy a bin. And that's not uncommon. You know, it's how cities make the economics of recycling work. But with our grant, we're going to be able to give universal access to all 230,000 households there and make sure that we create common, consistent access. And the city partners that we've been working with in Baltimore are excellent leaders, and they are seeing this as that community pride that we talked about just a little bit of. This is a good way to bring the whole city of Baltimore together through the common access. Interestingly, COVID has really made recycling a challenge in Baltimore. So we track carefully every city that's been impacted by COVID. Baltimore is one that's had to push pause on their program. It's not from a lack of commitment. It's not from a lack of leadership. It's because people have to people have to collect recycling. It's a very human-centric way of making that system work. With our grant, we're going to be able to move them to an automated system. So everyone will have a roll cart, and the trucks that the employees of the city will drive will have an automatic arm to empty them. It is such a safer way to run a program, not just from a COVID and disease and infection point of view. It certainly is for that, but for just general worker safety. You think about backs, you think about the dangerous equipment that's right. Involved. So that's part of why we're really excited about these grants, is to help with the worker safety side as well.
So right now, Baltimore's on pause. The city of Baltimore, for a little while at least, is not going to be recycling.
I'm not sure if that covers today. They have been on pause, but I would need to check and make sure that they absolutely still are right now. But yeah, they called us to say, guys, we're going to need to pause our program for a short amount of time because of this until we can get past their current spike in their COVID numbers. And we understand their concern. They have to keep their employees safe, right? And we need to make sure they had a workforce issue of just people being able to want to do this work at the time. So, we can't lose sight of the frontline workers, and sanitation workers are definitely in that camp.
Absolutely. So both of you, this is my follow-up superhero question. In this space, if you had to meet someone that would be like your superhero in the space, and maybe it's somebody that you've already met, maybe we can get creative with the answer, but like, who are your personal superheroes in this world of whether it be ocean plastics, waste, environmental, like someone that you guys would personally love to just sit down and spend an hour with?
I think for me, and this is gonna sound so corny, but Greta Thunberg. I think if I could just speak with her and see what levers she's been able to tug to really influence this conversation in a way that I don't think I've seen before. And it seems like she's the poster child of this movement of awareness of, the harm that we're causing to our planet. I think if nothing else, and just to gain a little shine from her and bring some more awareness to the work of the Recycling Partnership, I think that'd be fantastic.
We're gonna work on that. I got to figure out how to make that happen. But I think that's an amazing answer. Nailed it. She's a superhero for sure. She's got superhero powers.
From a nonprofit leadership point of view, I'd want to talk to David Yarborough with Audubon Society, because I think that's an example of a longstanding nonprofit that has built trust around birds and now is using that to advance climate action. I think that his sort of leadership with that nonprofit engages the private sector and the public sector, engages citizens. And I think that that's just a really interesting one. And, there are always going to be bird lovers who want to protect birds for birds, but using birds as the catalyst to connect to climate, I think that's brilliant. We think about that somehow similarly at the partnership of, the end goal is not just to recycle. Recycling is our means of connecting to climate action, right? We think about climate action and the big piece of a pie of we need to deal with waste, how materials are made, where they go, and the carbon impact of that is how we set our North Star. So if not Greta, can we have a Greta David duo?
Yeah, totally. We can get super creative here, and you think about it ties in with plastics and birds too. I mean, and just there's so many. I just saw a new study. I think Marcus Erickson was on Tuesday, and he put a slide up around just like how it's like 956 different bird species they found plastic waste in their stomach. So it's like what a great way to tie these things together. You made me think of Ann Summers too, Keefe. Ann Summers is Keefe's.
My college biology professor. So when I went with Dave on this expedition into the ocean, I called up my college instructor. I started off researching turtles with her, and I really thought I was going to be a biologist. And I got to travel to Costa Rica and work on turtles with Ann there, and then in North Carolina. And she really pushed me. I had come back from this protest, as a good 19-year-old should, and I was feeling very fight the man. And she doesn't remember saying this to me, but it was a pivotal, life-changing moment. I remember standing in her office and explaining this to her, and she's like, you could also think about who has the power in this world, and power is held by corporations and bureaucracies, so maybe you should work within them instead of against them. And I was like, and it changed my whole life. And now I started to run a nonprofit, and who do we work with? Corporations and bureaucracies, because we want it together in tandem. So anyway, when I knew that this trip into the ocean to go look at plastics up front and center was going to happen, I called her up, and I hadn't seen her or really talked to her in about 15 years. And I was like, Ann, you want to go on a boat and talk to corporate executives about plastics from someone who has launched thousands of young professionals in the space into the world. And so Anne came, and Anne is still teaching.
She's incredible. She's like, she's full of fire. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, she is not retired yet. And when it was time to sign up to go snorkeling, she was like first on the list, Dave. She was like, I'm not missing this chance. She had her own wetsuit. Like, she was out the door.
Andrew, we were out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, like 500 miles off the coast of Bermuda. Like, nobody gets in the water in the middle of they just don't do it. But they have big sargassum seaweed patches that collects all the plastic. So, we have all these corporate execs and all these NGO leaders and a lot of people that really didn't like each other at all that were on this boat together. And it was powerful. We had like perfect weather, and like we got a ton of plastic out there. I mean, it was really pretty. There was a couple of the companies that were represented found some of their own products out there, which was pretty intense. But
you know what Anne pointed out about that?
He was one of the main seasickers out there.
Oh yeah. Well, I wasn't going to bring that up. I was giving him a little break.
Weird about him.
What Anne also pointed out when we were in the middle of the sargassum is that it was not teeming with the amount of life that she expected it. The Sargasso Sea is like serves a similar purpose as estuaries, of being the nursery where things are born and grow, and it protects the young sea life by having this dense mat of plant so that the little beings can hide and grow and mature. And we still don't know where sea turtles go for part of their maturity. They hatch, they leave, and they come back 30 years later. And it's understood that they just kind of go to the Sargasso to mature. And Anne pointed out to me that she did not see it teeming with life like she would expect and hope. And that worried me. But Dave, Andrew and I had to answer the superhero. What about you?
I just watched David Attenborough's documentary, and like most people say David Attenborough, but like he's really doing well at 94 and got a pretty incredible. I have a lot of them for sure, but yeah, I would say right now, just after watching that new documentary, David Attenborough, which is cliche, I know, but what are you going to do? Andrew and I had the cliche answers, like the number two sort of people out there in the environmental world.
Hey, speaking of cliches, can we pull it back around? Andrew and I were talking about this before we started, and Andrew had this example of how challenging it is to be a Black person in the space when sometimes your words aren't seen. Like, could you give the example? It was such a classic cliche that I think it'd be a really good one to kind of tie a bow on this conversation.
Yeah. So I was. At my previous position, I was working with one of the haulers. We work on making sure that recycling programs within the county are where they need to be. So we're having this conversation, and I'm trying to understand from him either bring up the smart MRF. We've kind of talked, I think, before we started filming about this idea of a smart MRF, and I was trying to understand how that could help him, and how all of these arrangements can be made for us to serve the recycling industry in a stronger way. So I finished trying to figure these things out, and he just kind of tilts his head and says, you're really articulate. So at that point, it becomes clear that not a lot of what I said was being paid attention to. So it was kind of caught up in the messenger rather than the message. So yeah, we were talking about just the idea of valuing the content over the contributor. I think is a really important element that we can all do in terms of creating a more equitable society. It's a matter of making sure that we're not entering any engagements with preconceived notions about what a person is or what they're going to say or where they're coming from. I think that's an important element, and it's something that I noticed just being pretty, in my experience, pretty rare among the phenotypes in any given room at any given time. So
isn't that really like at the heart of everything that we're talking about here, though? Yeah. I mean, when you're talking about at a community level or at an individual level, I mean that is absolutely. That story that you just told is really like a microcosm of the biggest challenge that we have here.
Mm-hmm. And as the partnership is committed, we are launching this inclusion fund. We're going to use our network of recycling coordinators to empower them to be ambassadors for environmental justice. And when Andrew told me that story, what it struck me is just how difficult it is as we're trying to get more diverse people into this field. For them to immediately not have the same standing of appreciation of their experience. I just made me realize how challenging this is going to be, but we get to do that all together. So,
well, and I think it's interesting too. You think about, just we're going back to Ovie Mughelli. I mean, from what he said, there's like one other athlete that he knows that has an environmental foundation, and most athletes with success have a foundation, and a lot of them are amazing. They go back into the community and they're doing, but only he knows of him and one other pro athlete that has an environmental foundation. And it's that's telling too. It's like, what can we do to really spark a movement here, right? And we would just applaud you guys for just jumping in the deep end and going for it here.
And we're not going to get fatigued by this. Our statement on why this matters is on our website, and we have a call to action to everyone to join us in questioning and figuring out what we can do. But one other thing we're doing, Dave, is we have core values in our organization that we all live by, and we have them on our desk. Gold star, Andrew. But what our team decided is that we don't have one that is a core value just about being ambassadors of social justice and using our platform at the partnership to fight racism. So we're collectively writing a new one right now. And by the end of the year, we're going to update our core values with one more. And I just feel this continued sense of momentum around this. It makes me very hopeful for the future.
And that's one thing I will commend the recycling partnership on, is not only just making the statement that these things matter, but analyzing our position within the space and realizing where we can make the differences and taking steps to make those differences. So that's really exciting. I feel like those last couple of steps are left out of. So, I mean, we've all seen it before, but those last steps are left out of so many corporate actions.
You know what we'd love to do, guys? We'd love to continue this narrative over time. We'd love to have you guys back. We'd love to talk about how your different programs on this front are developing and where you're running into obstacles and challenges. And I mean, this should be something that is on front and center for everybody that's involved in this industry and in solving this overarching plastic waste problem, right? So I'm super grateful to have you on today, and really, really grateful to have this conversation, and let's do it again soon.
Okay, I'm game. You game, Andrew?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And I'm excited to see what the new addition to your goals are. Sorry.
Oh yeah, our core
values.
Yeah. I'll share them with you. We'll talk about them the next time.
All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming on. Next, Andrew Linebarger, Keefe Harrison from the Recycling Partnership. You can check them out at therecyclingpartnership.org.
Right?
Org. They're doing incredible work, amazing partners with us, and we're so grateful. We have next Tuesday is Election Day. We are going to take off on Election Day, for obvious reasons. There will be a lot on that day. And then we're actually coming back next Friday with artist Ben Von Wong, who is an incredible friend and a creative advisor for the Ocean Plastic Leadership Network, and has done some incredible art installations, raising awareness around ocean plastics. So with that being said, guys, just super grateful for the conversation.
Don't forget to vote.
Don't forget to vote.
Please vote. Please vote.
Have a great day.
Thanks.